agent Joel Wolf, who works at Wasserman and represents Giancarlo Stanton and some other big names like Yamamoto, like I mentioned. Ken, let's get right into it. Were you surprised to see those comments after the tirade the other day? And what did you think of the response that Joel sent to you?
I was surprised by the comments, yes, by Cashman, and I was surprised by Joel Wolf's response. Frankly, Joel Wolf is a guy who is usually very reserved and does not say anything that makes waves in general. It's very rare for him to have a response like that. But clearly he felt he needed to defend his client and step up and say something. Now, it doesn't mean the Yankees are out on Yamamoto. If the Yankees offer the most money on Yamamoto, they're getting Yamamoto. But clearly Joe Wolf in this case wanted to send a message. And as for Cashman's comments, I agree with what you guys are saying, that it is extremely unusual for a GM to take that forward an approach with a player. And it's also really unusual for a GM to talk about a player who is injured in that fashion. One of the first lessons I learned doing this job, and this goes back to the late 80s, and Tim Kirkchin taught me this, is that injuries are very difficult to question. You don't know what's going on in a player's head or his body, and you question a player for being hurt, and you run a real risk. It's kind of unfair to do that. Now, Cashman is not necessarily questioning Stanton. He's merely stating that Stanton does get hurt a lot, and he has an expectation he will get hurt a lot. As Eric said, that is probably an accurate statement. It's just one you don't hear GMs say, and it probably should go down as not appropriate because you cannot talk that way about players. As you guys mentioned, Giancarlo Stanton does not want to get hurt. He is not out there trying to get hurt. He's had trouble staying healthy. And frankly, the Yankees bear responsibility in that too. They are the team that employs him. They are a team that has had many injury problems, in part because they acquire players who have medical histories. But at the same time, it's their job to try to keep him healthy as best they can. And that hasn't happened. We know that hasn't happened. It is a reality. But for a GM to say that about a player, that's unusual and I would say pretty uncalled for.
Hey, Ken, do you think Cashman is trying to change his own narrative here a little bit? Do you think he's been getting heat from the fans for a lot of years now. He's getting heat from a lot of people. He's been getting pressure as well. Do you think he's trying to change his narrative and trying to be a different person in all this? And then my next question would be as well, if you can harp on it, do you think there's a method to his madness? Maybe trying to get Giancarlo, to get pissed off enough to waive his no-trade clause? Like, talk to me about both those situations.
I don't know about changing the narrative. It seems to me Brian Cashman's been doing this job for a quarter century. And he's done it in the most difficult city to do it in, New York, where the attention is greatest. He's been under scrutiny for that quarter century, and he is going to speak his mind. And we've seen that now a few times this offseason, and I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I applaud it because we want more honesty and transparency from the people running the teams. At the same time, I'm not sure if this is motivational. I'm not sure where it's coming from. I do encourage people to read the entire article by Gary Phillips because it's not as negative as it comes across in that one quote from Cashman. I expect him to get hurt because he's got hurt before, whatever the quote exactly was. He does give a broader outlook on Stanton. It's not that critical as a whole, but certainly that comment was part of it, and he has to be accountable for that. As for just the idea of making a different aura around the Yankees, changing the narrative, I just don't see Cashman being that Machiavellian or manipulative. I just think he's reacting to what he perceives as a lot of noise. He has taken a lot of criticism. He believes some of it is unfair. And you know what? If a person is getting criticized and they believe it's unfair and they want to say so publicly, I've got no problem with that. That person should be defending himself or herself. Now, Todd, what was the second part of the question? This is why I never asked two-part questions.
Yeah, sorry. No, I was wondering, do you think he's saying this to try and get Giancarlo to waive his no-trade clause, even though they'd probably eat up most of that money?
I don't, and I don't know that it was that premeditated. I wasn't there for that interview. Gary Phillips got the quotes from Brian Cashman. Gary works for the New York Daily News. But even if I was there, I would seriously doubt that Cashman's trying to do that. And if I'm Giancarlo Stanton, and you want to trade me, be my guest. Try to trade me, and then we'll negotiate the no trade clause, if that's the case here, if the Yankees really don't want him. But as you guys mentioned earlier, Giancarlo Stanton obviously has not been on the field enough, obviously can be a very disappointing player at times, but any notion that he doesn't care, that would be mistaken. He cares a lot. He's frustrated by what has happened. He doesn't like what has happened. And he's especially frustrated that he's been unable to avoid one thing after another. So I don't see it necessarily going that way, Todd. I guess it's conceivable that that could be part of Cashman's motivation. But it seems to me he was just more speaking off the cuff. And again, when you read the full context, it's not quite as damning.
So Ken, I've got two. I'll just go one at a time here. So I've learned my lesson right away. So first off, do you think that this particular comment warrants a public apology from Cash? Because a lot of what just was said a few days ago could be debated and was fun to talk about. And he definitely was defensive, and there were curse words, and he was defending how they're approaching analytics. Okay, fine. A lot of that can be debated. On this front, because you never see it, and because it's clearly being taken personal by player/players rep, do you expect that Cash would come out and say, hey, I didn't mean it like that? You know, even if it goes that way, hey, I actually was trying to be more complimentary and this came out wrong, whatever. I feel like this part warrants that based on how teams usually operate with their players. Do you?
I can't read Cashman's mind, and I don't know exactly what he's thinking. There are two ways to look at it. Yes, you can make a public apology, or more likely, I would think, you just let it rest and you don't go any further. You probably apologize or explain yourself to Giancarlo privately. You can do that, but I don't know that you need to keep the news cycle going, because as we know, in this day and age, by, 6 p.m. tonight, there'll be another story and there'll be other things going on and it will pass. So I would expect maybe a private conversation, an explanation. I don't expect a public apology.
Okay. I know the first question Giancarlo is getting asked in spring training if he's not caught up before that.
And I guess, Scott, if I could forecast that and look ahead to that, my guess would be Giancarlo would say, hey, I understand what Cashman is saying. I don't like being injured. I don't want to be injured. I'm going to do everything I can not to be injured. And that would be that.
And he did say towards the end of the season, I know at least one time when I read about his comments, to the press saying like, hey, this was a disaster. I'm going to get back in the lab. I got to figure shit out. So I get that. So my other question was, do you feel like some of this has to do with the Yankees piling on? I think one of the common narratives for a while now from Yankee fans is Giancarlo, he's holding us back. That contract, he's a little over $30 million. It was backloaded, so you're getting more of the money now than when he first signed with the Marlins. That was also on purpose, most likely, if you read into it. I don't think the Marlins expected to keep him the whole way through. But anyway, there's a billion moves that have been made that have been criticized, Montas and Donaldson and Gallo, whatever. I feel like this is a weak scapegoat. Do you? This is what Yankee fans have been using, acting like, oh, this is holding back their payroll. Like, that's not, is there a salary cap? Or am I missing something?
No, there's no salary cap.
Okay.
And the Yankees' payroll has been quite high. Could it be higher? Yes, it could be higher. And that question persists around Hal Steinbrenner, and it's going to persist as long as they kind of operate with certain limits, it seems. Now, Giancarlo Stanton, and whether he should be a scapegoat or not, I don't look at it like that, Scott, and I don't believe fans should either. The way I see this, and what I've written here, is that move, the move to Stanton, was kind of the first in a series of moves in which they got less athletic and more rigid and station to station and all of that. Now, at the time, Giancarlo Stanton was not this guy. He was coming off an amazing season. He was playing the outfield at a high level, and I remember writing about his outfield play and how good it was. So he was not perceived as non-athletic. But, of course, he was getting older, and perhaps the Yankees should have had a better vision with regard to that. They made that deal, in my view, because they got a great deal from the Marlins, financially and with players. They didn't give up much. And from that perspective, it should have worked out well for them if Stanton had continued at an MVP level. He did not. But to scapegoat any one player for a franchise's troubles is always ill-thought, ill-conceived. And instead, you have to look at the broader group of players and group of moves that has happened here. And there have been a number of moves that have not worked out. And that's the one thing last week with Cashman's comments that I thought maybe he could have taken more accountability for. He did say that, yes, we've made some moves that haven't been working out well. But at the same time, we know what the moves have been. We know it's a series of moves. It's not one, it's not two, it's 5, 6, 7. And that's the area where maybe, in my view, he could have said, hey, I get it. And he kind of did this, but that's the part that got a little lost. If he could have gone farther or would have gone farther, maybe it would have been better received.
Let's push to the Braves here. You wrote in your article about how the Braves don't have anybody over $22 million, but it doesn't mean that they're not willing to go over. It's just, matter of fact, nobody's over $22 million. Are they really going to spend? Because if you look at the battery around their park and everything, yeah, they have tons of money. But are they really going to spend, or are they going to be a team that's going to, outside of maybe 1 or 2 starting pitchers, are they going to just push the market for other teams to make sure other teams are spending?
Eric, I don't know. I can't forecast free agency. I'm not very good at that. No one really is. But they certainly seem willing for the right player to go beyond the $22 million highest salary that they have on the books right now. And those $22 million salaries are for Austin Riley and Matt Olson as part of extensions that they signed. They're not making $22 million yet, but in time that they will. So those were extensions. Free agency obviously is different. They offered Freddie Freeman more than $22 million a year in free agency. And I expect that if they're going to be active for Aaron Nola or Sonny Gray or whoever it might be, they'll be at least in that range, if not above. For Nola, it probably would require them to be above. I had someone in my comments under the article, after I wrote that, mention, well, I don't think the Braves are going to give up 2 draft picks because they're over the luxury tax, and that's what the penalty would be for any free agent with a qualifying offer. That would be Nola and Gray and all of the top free agents. I understand that logic, but here's the other part of that. They face the loss of Max Fried after next season. Max Fried is entering his walk year. So they need to get an anchor in there, in my opinion. And as far as the draft picks are concerned, sure, they don't want to lose their 2nd and 5th choices. But if they do lose Max Fried and make him a qualifying offer at the end of next season, they get a pick back. So that kind of mitigates it. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do because they are not a team that has generally been active in free agency. They've been a team that locks up their own players and does a great job of it. So here they are. They're facing a bit of a crossroads here. Potential loss of Fried, need for rotation help currently. It all adds up to them going out and getting a starter. Now, it could be through a trade, Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, you name it, or it could be through free agency.
All right, Ken, I want to take you to the Oakland A's situation because there was some news late last night from Evan Drellick, your colleague at The Athletic, reporting on teams, or owners, I should say, getting some notes from the league that they put together to talk to them about the situation because they're going to vote, what's today, Tuesday? On Thursday, I believe, is the day, at least from the owner's side, if they approve the relocation, which, as far as I know, still has no relocation fee, which I still haven't really found a good answer on. But anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts overall on what you saw from Evan, which included the fact that he had someone tell him, someone briefed with the situation, said the A's potentials for success there is iffy, but there's no perceived better alternative. Your thoughts?
What Evan reported is that the relocation committee's report is done and that most likely it will be unanimously approved. That is what we all expect. And yet there are still obstacles. The teachers union there in Nevada is mounting a challenge legally toward this move and trying to basically get in the way. So it's not done yet, even if the major league owners vote 30-0 that they approve the relocation of the A's. The question of Las Vegas has been a question since the beginning of this. And it seems to me that if you want to take the worst case view of it, that Las Vegas is a better alternative perhaps than Oakland in the eyes of owners, but it is not a slam dunk by any stretch of the imagination. Now, Oakland people will tell you, and I've written this, they've told me this, that they still are viable and they still should be considered. That's all well and good. The owners and Commissioner Rob Manfred seemingly do not believe that. They do not believe that Oakland is viable. So then you're looking at Vegas. How good a market is Vegas? It remains to be seen. As Evan wrote, the success of that franchise is going to hinge in part on tourism dollars. They're going to need people coming in from other places because the population in Las Vegas is not that great to sustain a major league team 81 dates a year. Now, my question is, how many people are going to Las Vegas in the summer to watch Major League Baseball? Maybe they will, but I don't know that it's a certainty. And while this team should be in a better position than it was in Oakland, at least in the view of the owners, I'm not sure how good a position it's actually going to be. And that's been my question with this all along.
So why, Ken? Why are they in such a rush to make this happen? Why not explore other possibilities in Nashville, which has always been the expansion list? Charlotte's been talked about. There's been a bunch of Portland's been talked about. Why are they in such a rush to go to Las Vegas? If you read this article, like there's memos saying, we don't know if people are going to watch on TV. We don't know if people are going to come to the game. I know people that live in Las Vegas, they don't want the A's. They want an expansion team to start their own franchise. They don't want the A's, like kind of like the Raiders, right? The Raiders, but the Vegas people aren't really into the Raiders. It's more people from Oakland and other places coming to watch the Raiders. So why are they in such a hurry to make this happen? Why not explore Nashville? Why not explore Portland? Why not explore, I know the Giants will never let it happen in San Jose, but this just seems like it's being so rushed.
I kind of agree with you, AJ, and I'm not sure I understand why this is being accelerated at this rate. Nashville is out because that city, it seems to me, MLB wants to preserve for expansion. Portland, I don't know that that's much of a better market than Las Vegas is. Salt Lake City is now a team or a city that is interested in expansion, and maybe they get a franchise. But Vegas, for whatever reason, seemed to have the deal, and John Fisher, as the A's owner, seemed to want that deal. Now, if I'm Rob Manfred and if I'm the Major League owners, I'm asking exactly the same questions that you're asking, AJ. But again, they seem to believe that this is the lesser of two evils. And what you're saying, and what I would ask as well, is why not consider more than two evils? And maybe some of those evils wouldn't be evils. I'm not sure of the logic behind that. That's something that we probably should ask once this is announced as approved by the Major League owners, and Manfred, I presume, will hold a news conference at that time.
And Ken, we have some video. It looks like Oakland fans, and yes, even the mayor has still been speaking out that they have pushed significant money aside to be able to make this work, but that seems to be, in the past. But we have apparently there's been like gift boxes that are being sent to owners, and this is apparently out in Arlington right now at the owners' meetings. So they're still going all out on that front. My one other thing is, based off what you just said, if MLB called Nashville, whoever was the leading candidate there to have a team, or I guess really it's not a leading candidate, it would be the politicians there or something, like, and said, hey, this is the only way you're getting a team, which it felt like that was kind of pushed towards Vegas's way. Like, hey, this is how you're going to get a team. Wouldn't they say yes as well if they really want to have a team in their city? Because the one thing that I'm sensing is that they're like, oh, this is easy. We already got the public money approved. Because Manfred did kind of paraphrase and say, well, if that became an issue, then maybe it would affect what John Fisher's doing. I just think the A's brand has been destroyed. And in Vegas, same thing. I've been there multiple times since this news was announced. Sure, I'm just going up to random people and having conversations. None of them want the A's. They all know about the owner. How many people know names of owners? I'm getting the sense that the brand is really in a bad place.
I agree with that, Scott. And that's the other part of this that will not come up at the owners' meetings. What has been done to the A's franchise by John Fisher and the diminishment of the brand and all that has happened. And the idea that you simply walk into a city and suddenly you're welcomed. Oh, it can happen, and it will happen to a certain degree. When Bob Irsay took the Colts to Indianapolis, they welcomed him. But at the same time, how is John Fisher going to operate this franchise once he gets to Las Vegas? To me, that's the biggest question. Is he actually going to spend money? Is he actually going to run the team as a bona fide major league operation, or is he going to continue with the kind of payrolls that he's run the last few years? Now, his point of view is, hey, we're going to be able to access a lot more money. We'll have a greater payroll. Things are going to be better. I hear that. I understand that. I want to see it. I want actual proof that it's going to happen. And we won't know, and we won't have that proof, of course, until the team moves in. But I'll believe it when I see it, based on his actions the last several years.
Now, a little bit to the west, Jim Bowden talked about this the other day about how the Giants are going to be monster bidders in Shohei Ohtani. I cannot wait to see how this all pans out. Now, my question to you about the whole situation is, are they going to be the only ones? We know about the Dodgers. We know about now the Giants. Are there other teams that are going to be monster bidders as well? And what are you hearing about this so far?
Oh, I expect, Todd, there are going to be more than two teams on Shohei Ohtani. And in fact, I would expect that virtually every large market team will at least check in. Texas is going to be one. The Cubs will be another. The two New York teams, they might not do it, but they'll be in contact with Nez Balello of CAA, that is Ohtani's agent, and they're going to at least want to know the price of doing business. Now, in the end, which teams are the heaviest? Jim Bowden doesn't know. I don't know. You guys don't know. No one knows, and we'll see how it all plays out. The one team I expect to be somewhat serious is Texas, because Texas is coming off a World Series title. They are emboldened by what they've done the past two seasons, or past two off seasons. Spent $800 million on free agents, and in my view, they're going to keep going. It's a competitive group there. Chris Young is a crazy competitor as their GM, and their owners have clearly been willing to support a big-time payroll, and they're coming off a World Series title, so they're in a good spot from that perspective financially as well. The other teams, Chicago, Cubs, Boston, I expect they'll be in, but I don't know. No one knows what Shohei Ohtani wants. Now, he clearly wants a lot of money. He'll get that from whatever team he signs with. That we know. Geography, I'm sure, would play a part. A team's competitive future would play a part. But the balance of this and what he truly wants, that is not known, and there's going to be a ton of speculation in the next month about this as we get closer to him signing. And I would suggest people take it with a grain of salt, because there's only one guy, Shohei, who really knows what is driving this thing.
The Giants. The Giants. If they don't get him, this is less about Shohei and more the Giants. Is this a failure by the Giants? Because they need a star. And if they don't get Shohei, do they then pivot to another free agent? Because if they don't, Bellinger. Is he enough of a star to shine the star that the Giants need?
I don't know that any team can consider it a failure if they don't sign Shohei Ohtani. They may make a great bid, and he might simply want to be somewhere else for similar money. I'm not going to look at it like that. Do the Giants need a star, Eric? We all know that. They certainly do. And they thought they were close last year, first with Judge, then with Correa. The Correa thing fell apart because of the medical. He had agreed to a deal. He was coming to San Francisco. So clearly, yes, they are going to be in this game, and they do need some might, some level of stardom, some force in that lineup, and frankly, in their rotation, and just in general, from an entertainment standpoint. One of the problems with the Giants last season, not just their performance, they were a tough watch. All the platooning that they did, they're kind of faceless. It just was a tough thing to see on a daily basis. It really wasn't all that entertaining. So that's why they are shifting directions somewhat. They moved on from Gabe Kapler. They hired Bob Melvin. They're going to try to do some things a little bit differently. But I wouldn't consider it a failure if they don't sign him. If they don't sign Shohei Ohtani, then the question becomes, okay, what are you going to do? And last year, after they struck out on the two big guys, they made a series of moves. Some worked out better than others. It was Haniger, it was Conforto, it was a number of others. That can be a way to go, but really, that's a piecemeal way to go. And at this point, they want to do a little bit more.
Ken, we appreciate it. Busy day, and some trades maybe too. So we'll be on the lookout. And also props to you on breaking the Murphy news late last night. Was that last night? Where am I? right?
Yep.
Last
Last
night.
night.
Murphy news last night. I'm like, damn.
Yep.
There's been a lot of news, and there hasn't even been any signings yet. So, Ken, we'll be on the lookout for you over the next couple hours.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider, with us. Also, Fair Territory is out there for the world to see. It was released yesterday. It's still quite relevant. So check that out. Let's do a little standing O right now and give a nod to the Rookie of the Year winners, which we – oh, sorry. I forgot. My friends at Teza. A little more for you. Use the discount code FOUL, F-O-U-L, for 20% off your first order at TezaEnergy.com. And now,